This is Dr. Tami Dean, and you are listening to the Equity Hour podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. My goal is that as a listener, you leave with new ideas, resources, and actionable steps for your educational community. Let's explore how we can use our voices for equity and social justice today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Equity Hour with me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean, and my guest today, Dewayne McClary, is going to bring some gems to us today to talk about what he's been doing and what he's up to. You guys get a little preview, but Dewayne is a native of Kingstree, South Carolina. He's a graduate of Williamsburg County School District. After he graduated high school, he got his bachelor's degree from Francis Marion University. He got his executive master's from Georgetown University. Very fancy in business. Very fancy, very fancy. But Dewayne comes with over 15 years of broad and deep experience as a teacher, school administrator, district leader. Y'all, he's done all the things. Trust me, we've worked together before. He has worked in rural South Carolina, the suburbs of Virginia, and urban DC. He is also, can't leave this out, a very proud member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Welcome, Dewayne.
Hey, Tami, how are you?
I'm, good. I'm hanging in there.
It's good. It's good to virtually see you again.
I know, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. I was so glad you wanted to come on the podcast because I know you bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to share with not just educators, but also like the corporate world, right? I think sometimes people think they're super separate with what we do, and there's a lot of overlap there.
There's a lot of overlap. When I was in a district, we call it the dark side. But once I got on the dark side, I was like, oh, it's not as dark as it. There's a lot of connection here with K-12. And a lot of people don't understand or see that. So
yeah,
I'm very excited to talk a little bit about that shortly.
Yes, I love that.
Thank you for boosting me up and telling people I'm a good person. So
of course you are.
I have to live up to that.
You absolutely can,
and I
got a lot of
promise to be nice.
To be nice. Okay. Well, as long as you promise, then
I'm not gonna go too deep into what's going on now in these days.
Yeah, we would be here all night.
Political side, my political science side, come on, just say cut.
Oh, yes. Who was it? I was just talking to someone and they're like, well, the Daily Show is set for life. It's set. They're like, that's where I'm going to get my news from now on because I can take it a little bit easier. But no. Yes, and I got a reputation. People are like, oh, if you cool with Tami, then you cool. So, no, I'm just kidding. But, okay. So, but for real, though, one of the things that I talk about a lot on here is, social justice, equity work. All of this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? And there is a lot of misconception that, I can do this a one and done, or, you're a quote unquote expert, so you know all the things, which, I think it's always a learning path and learning journey. And so I always like all my guests to share kind of a little brief snippet of kind of what brought you into this space and this work and being involved.
I would say I started really focusing on equity, really doing it's interesting that we talk about this now. So I've always been involved in social justice. My family kind of forced me there. I had a great aunt who was like the NAACP for our area.
Okay.
And she was that person. Fast forward to my high school years, I became very involved in the local chapter of the Youth and College Division of NAACP. College years, became the education committee chair for the state of South Carolina Youth and College Division of NAACP, and later became the state president for the Youth and College Division. So social justice has always been through and through my blood. Growing up, I had many civil rights leaders in my community that I can name, that I could reach out to or live down the street from me, join a march anytime, any day across the state of South Carolina. Cool. And so that has been something that I've taken with me even when I went into education, starting out in my early years in my hometown, where I saw, students who looked like me,
Hmm.
who came from communities that were, very impoverished, and it was sad to see, but they didn't have the access that other, students across the state had. We were in what they call the corridor of shame, and if you don't know what that is, people look that up in the state of South
Okay.
Carolina. So it's pretty much the most impoverished area across the state and maybe on the East Coast. And so we were struggling with, kids that had never left the city limits. We started a Boys and Girls Club and we took them to Atlanta, Georgia. We took them to see a baseball game. We took to the Coca-Cola Museum. We took to the African American Museum. The funny thing is to see these young men and women at the Boys and Girls Club that we created
Hmm.
um, hanging on the side of the windows of the bus seal because they were leaving the Williamsburg County line. They had never left the county.
Wow.
Not even then to even talk about the state. Like it was just sad to see, but it was also exciting because we were given that experience. So
Yeah.
for me, it's always been about giving opportunity and access
Hmm.
to individuals that were in my arm's length. And that kind of led me to wanting to broaden, my reach and came to DC, worked in Arlington Public Schools for about 3 years. We started the first one-to-one in the district. Had some pushback, but it was, it was necessary. It was a
Yeah.
very, high affluent district, but there were also some inequities across the district. Some schools had certain devices versus others, and
Yeah.
we kind of normalized that. Later came the DC Public Schools, where my eyes were open even wider to the very vast inequities there was, especially when it came down to digital equity. And when I
Yeah.
talk about digital equity, it's like a five-pronged stool.
Hmm.
It's like affordable and reliable internet access. And we're just
Hmm.
not talking about this. I'm talking
Right.
about real broadband internet access in your
Yeah.
home, access to an appropriate device. And when I say appropriate, because it depends on the needs, it could be a
Yes.
laptop, it could be a tablet, whatever that need is for that individual. And then the third stool is digitized curriculum. A lot of people, we put these devices in the hands of kids, but what are they going to do on it? Have you digitized the curriculum? Have you aligned your curriculum to even meet the needs? And most districts at that time, I think we're past that, they were buying the device and then fixing the curriculum to align with the device when it should be the opposite way. You should be have your curriculum content folks at the table finding the device that aligns with your needs. Like,
Yes.
do you have probes? Do they need to plug into USB or USB-C? Do you have those peripherals? Like, it's so many moving parts that you got to have someone that's really thinking about it from that standpoint.
Yeah. Well, and even the why and when you're going to use the technology. Because I know,
Correct.
working on my doctorate, part of what I did studied was ed tech, and that was one of the things, right? Like, just because you don't just take a worksheet and then put it on a device, and now we're like
No.
using technology, right? Like, there's a reason and a purpose and an
What's the
intent.
outcome you want?
Yes.
Exactly.
Like, and then what is the best tool for that outcome? It may or may not be like the device,
Technology. Correct.
which I think is where we are right now, in my opinion. I think we're just like, oh, we need to use a device. And so people are just using the device, thinking they're doing something well. And
Yeah.
that question is missing.
But we have a different movement, I think, now. We have a movement of banned cell phones. Get rid of them. Let me tell you, cell phones ain't going nowhere.
Oh,
like, I remember when I was an instructional technology coordinator, we were trying to get teachers to understand that devices are here and devices are here to stay. And if anything, it's going to
mhm.
get worse. How do we incorporate those tools? How do we cooperate those devices into the classroom? Because at one time before ESSA dollars came and COVID hit, we didn't have enough devices to give students. There was no
Right.
money, there was no funding for it. So, we had to utilize the student device. It could be some of them had iPads, some of them had cell phones. We're using those for the cahoots then
Yeah.
of the world. But now it's like, we're like, we don't want them, put them away. I think that's a slippery slope, and I know, a contentious conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but I want people to understand, where did this movement come from? Research it. Understand, where did this cell phone movement come from? Because sometimes we hitch our bandwagon to something that we don't know where it came from. Just look and see where that movement started.
Okay, so I think that's an interesting thing to look at because you're right. It's really easy to hitch our bandwagon to something or like, the sheep because the
Uh-huh.
information is quick and easy and are we doing our due diligence in vetting it?
Everybody else is doing it, so I think I better do it too. It's a
Right.
good slogan, student engagement, but you're giving schools, it's like you're making schools have another thing. Like it's like the, jack of all trades, but master of none. We have
Yeah.
schools doing, they got to be good at giving out devices. They got to be our internet provider. They got to be our social justice people. They have to also make sure our kids have therapy. You got to do IEP. They
I
got
was
to do
like,
that. It's
social
like,
emotional wellness.
exactly. When are they going to do instruction? We got them doing all of this stuff, and now you making them now enforce putting phones away and policing them when parents don't even police them themselves.
Well,
Parents can even
okay.
police the devices at home.
Well, let's get real for a second because I'm big proponent of we sometimes I'm going to say unintentionally, as educators, ask students to do things that we don't even do. So I would like ask the
100%.
teachers, how often are you also checking your device? Like if you're walking around your classroom with your phone in your back pocket
Right.
or your front pocket, uh, I'm just saying. Like
Hmm.
you're literally doing the same thing. And it's what we all
Was
do. And I do know that that's an issue and I've been, I've seen a few articles that talk about notifications and the number of notifications and how distracting it is. And I will 1,000% agree with that.
agree with it. Like my phone just went off just now. Like
See, that's
I
why I
agree
like
with it.
turn it upside down. I have like,
Uh-huh.
I talk about notifications being off, like, I'm like strategize, but they aren't going anywhere. So I think that's a really good point. I'm gonna myself have to look into where that came from because I'm not even sure myself,
That's
but I do
that's
think we're
that's
asking.
everyone's homework. Just kind of look, where did this movement start and who started
Yes. I love it. I love this. I love homework because I'm so nerdy. Like for real, I am. I'm so nerdy.
it?
Hey, you know what? It's the nerds of the world that kind of make it go around and come up with these really cool things. So,
Hey, yeah, I think I was considered a nerd when I was, younger. I was that kid. Well, my mom was a teacher, so I had no other choice.
like, it's okay. I mean, I was in band. I mean, doesn't that just by the very nature of being in band make you a little interested in learning more and getting a customized plan for you or your educators? Sign up for a free connection call with me, Dr. Tami, to discuss your personalized plan. The link is in the show notes.
No,
Ready?
it's the debate team. Like I was in the debate team.
Oh,
Chess club. Like yeah.
yeah. I had friends on the debate team. I personally was not on the debate team,
And
but
it was not my choice. It was my mother told me this is what you're gonna do, and so I did it.
you just were like, yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Scared of that lady, and still I'm 42, and I'm still scared of that lady.
Hey, it's good to have a little healthy, from your mama. Like, what did my daughter say to me? She said something to me to the effect, like, girl, I'm like, you still my
Yeah,
kid, like forever and ever.
I wouldn't say it was fear. I think it was more of a respect fear. Like I
Yeah.
respected my mother. I
Yes.
revered her. Like she could do no wrong and still can. I was brought up in that era. I was brought up in the era. You probably me and you same. We were brought up in an era where neighbors. We knew all of our neighbors. I couldn't go down the street without somebody calling. Hey, I saw him. So I used to ride my bike a lot, and I had a lot of community members around, and there were certain areas I couldn't go to, and there would be the old lady sitting on the porch, and they'll see me ride my bike, and they'll step on the porch. You're not supposed to go down there. Turn right around.
Look, the era of the bikes, man. That was so great. We were just so free.
doing all type of things and just riding
Oh,
everywhere you're not
look,
supposed to
they
be.
don't even know. And and then sometimes I think about our generation's gone the total other way and they're like, Live 360, I need to know where you are at all times.
Yeah, I track my kids. We track them on their phone. But the problem with that is then they end up tracking you. So it's like I'm at the store, like, Dad, can you pick me up so and so? And I'm like, how do you know I'm at the store? And I remember, oh, we're tracking each other on Find Me.
Oh, that happened once. I was on a trip for my birthday. My kids are like, "Oh, I see you're staying at this hotel." Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Y'all don't need to know all that. I don't need to know all that. But okay. Yes. Okay. So we digress. We digress, but it's all relevant. See, and this also is an example because this is what people do when they talk. They're like, "Oh, this made me think of this," and then they think of something else. And like you see this when educators try to do group work and they're like, "Oh, the kids talk about something else." Yeah, because we all do. That's like
We all do.
human nature. So like give the kids a pass, still do the group work and let them collaborate with each other. That's just my little plug for that. So so you've done a lot of things. Did you finish your journey talk? I don't even know, but you've done so many things working
Oh,
in
wow.
education. I'm curious. How did you move from wanting to being a political science and history major and doing business to deciding you wanted to go into education and work in schools? I mean, did
Wow.
your mom have something to do with that being a teacher or like how did that happen?
So I wanted to work in politics. I wanted to work on the Capitol Hill. I wanted to be that person. Like I wanted to move to DC. That was my ultimate goal.
Okay.
Luckily, I live in the suburbs of DC. And so I went to undergrad. My goal was to be a lawyer, political science with focus on government and history. Took the LSATs, graduated in June, wanted to go to law school in, that January. And so during that time when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, my mom, being the mom that she is, said, "Hey, you're just not going to sit here at my house
I knew that
from
was coming.
June to January till you figure out what you're going to do." And just do nothing. Go down to the school district. They need some long-term sub teachers. I think you took history. You probably certified for, alternative route. Go down there and figure something out. So she sent me downtown. At that time, no, she wasn't superintendent yet. She was the head of HR, Dr. Linda Hugh. I love her to death.
Mhm.
Um, and she was like, "Yeah, definitely." So I talked to her. She sent me over to Kingston Junior High School, same middle school I went to. So I'm now going back to the school, meeting the principal. They had a single gender program. So that means all core area classes were taught. They had boys and girls separated, but doing the regular, generic classes like PE, art, and doing lunch, they were co-ed. So I taught all boys eighth grade social studies. And when it was time for when December rolled around, I was thinking about going and get my master's or go to law school. I didn't want to go because I was enjoying the work of just supporting and teaching these young men. It was a
Yes.
challenge, but it was fun. And so I didn't go to law school. Fast forward, stayed a couple of years in Winsburg County, I think over 5 years, then Arlington and DC public schools. And right before COVID hit, I met Kim Smith like a year before. I was asked to be on a panel with the Department of Education on equity.
Uh,
And I met Kim Smith. She was then the executive director of the League of Innovative Schools at Digital Promise. And we started talking, develop a relationship. And one day, LinkedIn was just coming out. LinkedIn things pop up. And I
Yeah.
saw director of the league pop up. It's like, where is Kim going? So I text her like, "Where are you going? You're leaving?" And she was like, "No, I'm hiring a director. I'm still going to be here. Why are you interested?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not interested."
I was just being nosy, trying to see
It's
what
like,
you
I
were
just
doing.
didn't know. I thought you were going somewhere. And then she was like, "No, really, think about it." And so I came home, talked to my wife about it. I'm like, "Nah, I think I'm good." But then I talked to my then boss. And I remember talking to this person. They were very good at talking about what are your personal goals, beyond
Yeah.
just working here. What are your personal goals? So DCPS was good at that, very goal oriented. And I talked about leading a network.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it. I was like, Digital Promise is a network of superintendents and leaders. Like, that's where I want to end up. I will eventually want to be a superintendent. And so I called Kim back and was like, hey, I want to put in an application. She was like, do it. And, good luck. You go through the process, you make it, and I see you on the other side. Fast forward, I became director of the league. My very last day at DCPS was the actual Friday that they were closing for COVID. Not intentional. That's just what happened. We were actually sitting a couple of blocks away from central office off First Street at my party in a restaurant, and the announcement was coming through that they were closing for COVID. And I'll never forget it because that was like the time where everything was going crazy.
Oh,
But
yeah.
luckily enough, we had been doing a lot of work around one-to-one initiatives.
Mm.
This it took us 5 years to get there, honestly. And uh, it wasn't like it wasn't easy, but it was easier than some other districts, big districts, because we had already put the groundwork and laid the groundwork for one-to-one to happen. And so these students were able to get devices, get internet access, digitize curriculum, supports were put in place, left a well-oiled machine there of instructional coaches, technology instructional coaches, and specialists
Yeah.
who were able to, day one jump in and get the work done and love that work. But went on to run the League of Innovative Schools, Digital Promise, grew it to about 150 districts, brought in at that time the biggest class, and then other time brought in the most diverse class of leaders, it's particularly women and women of color, and did that for 3.5 years. I was traveling around the country, showing people that school was still happening because some people thought school was not happening, but there are a few districts that remained open, never closed. So I
Yeah.
was on Twitter, I had Where's Dewayne? And I was traveling and taking videos and showing the world that, school was happening.
School was happening. That was such a challenging time.
And
And
scary. I'll be
oh,
flying. I'd be the only person on the plane with a
yes, it
mask.
was,
That
yes,
was the most scariest thing.
yes, I had, to travel some during that time too, but like supporting just when we think about equity and digital equity during that transition, like you saw so much of that and like what some districts were able to provide for supports, what others just didn't have in place, or even where they are, the infrastructure just wasn't in place for students to have access to the internet to
Mhm.
do those types of things. So it really just highlighted those technological inequities to me, right? Around what's happening in school districts across the country,
Correct.
which is a challenge because technology is just a part of daily life at this point.
Mhm.
Kind of going back to what we
It's
said
like a light,
earlier. It's
it's
not
like
going
a
to go
light
anywhere.
switch. It's like a light switch. When I turn the light switch on, I expect the lights to turn on. But now it's like a light switch. I expect the lights to turn on, I expect the water to work, and I definitely expect internet to be there. But
Oh,
even now in this where we are, there's still a lot of people that are not connected to true broadband internet access.
yeah. 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 That's definitely one of those inequities. So you've just done all the things and traveled around, and very exciting that you are now launching and working on your own gig, like more officially, which is so exciting. We love that because there is just so much opportunity to me. There are so many great, knowledgeable educators like yourself and your team um, that can provide support, who've
Mhm.
kind of walked the walk, who've been there, who understand what happens in schools, how to support the leaders, how to support the educators. Because ultimately, I mean, what you didn't say this directly, but I feel like it sits with you too. Like, ultimately, it's about what happens for those students inside these school spaces and what we're
Right.
able to provide for those students. So, Prodigious Learning Solutions, that's just such a fancy name. I love it. Is the name of your company. Tell us about it.
So, Prodigious Learning Solution, our goal is to overcome barriers, transform education, and empower futures. And honestly, it started out just as a hobby. Me and a few of my friends, we are all former educators, from principals, superintendents, directors of special education, state level folks, special education teachers. It was about five or six of us. We were just sitting down and we were like, we look at this table, like we could run something here, like we could do something.
We can do something. We got
and
some
and
skills. Look at
and
us.
so they're like, Dwayne, you're in charge of it, figure it out. And so we've been I'm like, what? And so we've been doing this a couple of years now, but it's just a
Mhm,
side gig. It's not our full-time jobs. It's just something like, you run into a friend and they're like, man, I heard you're good at this. Can you help me with
mhm,
this? Um, Prime example, I had a charter school that was in the process of evaluating a new LMS.
mhm,
They didn't really know what to look for because they didn't have the bandwidth of someone with instructional background, ed tech,
mhm.
to ask the right questions. And so came in and helped them, one, pretty much developed their process,
Nice.
identified the top three, then also did a performance task where this top three had to actually, and I worked with the elementary, middle, and high school, where we actually developed those actual performance tasks where we gave them content that they had to put in their actual LMS because we wanted to see how it feels and look. You want speed grading, you want this, you want that, and we
Yeah.
want to see it exactly because people could come and sell you anything,
Oh,
but we actually want to we want
they
to
can tell
see
you
it.
all the things. You want to, does it actually do what
Yes.
you say it's going to do?
Yeah, yep. And so we
Hmm.
did that process, selected it, and then the next step was actually doing the professional development with their teachers. So manage the professional development, actually develop an on-demand training site on the LMS with them. So now they're rocking it out. So things like that. We've done other things from student engagement, advocacy, and activation, because a lot of times when we as leaders, we sometimes forget the end users, which is students.
Hmm.
And so helping them understand how do they activate students. We do a lot of strategic alignment and abandonment. A
Hmm.
lot of times we develop strategic plans, but we don't have the KPIs that are aligned with them. But as districts, we also are hard to abandon things. Like we keep buying things
Yes.
and
Like,
keep buying and keep buying and keep paying, but really don't look at the efficacy of it. So you have like 20,000 tools, but you're only using 10% of any license on either particular tool. So how do we, one, strategically abandon those, but ultimately look at what are the top ones that you need? Like what are the expectations and outcomes for instruction and curriculum you want students to get? And
hmm.
we go through and embed those tools. So help them dwindle down from hundreds. I had one district where we did the count, it was 10,600 plus applications in the district, and they only had license with 500 of them. So that means student data was going out the window. We can
That's
talk about
crazy.
cybersecurity,
Yes.
but helping them understand that, pull all that back, and we got them down to like a good 100 good applications and tools. Um, and a lot of that happened because of COVID. Teachers were leaving left and right. So they had to take their either instructional coaches or technology instructional coaches and put them back in the classroom. So that
Yeah.
left a void for the district when it came to integration or developing new tools, and we were able to fill that void. But
Yeah.
it's only been a side gig for us. We're looking to make it into a bigger gig, but like I said, it's a hobby right now. Like we just enjoy it. We're not out here trying to sell anything. We're just out here trying to help districts remove barriers,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and
it's
we're
like
excited
a
about it.
thought partner, right? Like,
Correct.
how do I strategically put in place the things that I want to happen based on my strategic plan and my outcomes? So we have like a profile of this graduate, or we say this is our priority. How do those things align? Because that's exactly true. Like, I've seen in my experience, like districts have duplication of
Yes.
platforms, and they don't necessarily need that. Like, this platform does this, but this one does this, this, and this. And then it just becomes confusing to educators. Like, how do we
And then that's
find,
where the inequities come in
yes,
for
because
students.
this just, this school uses this, and this one does this. And I'm all for different schools can have different needs for their students and responding to
Right.
those needs. But when we're looking at a baseline of what are we expecting or what are we saying we are providing for each of the students that are in the seats across all of our schools in our district,
Right.
what systems do we have in place to make sure that that is happening?
And like I know, taking anything from a teacher is is bad. But you have to do the work because you have to create floors and not ceilings for teachers
Mm-hmm.
because you have to have that standard. You can't compare apples to apples when you have apples, oranges, pears, grapes, and
Yes.
grapefruits. Um, and so how do you really know what's happening in your district? So we help districts develop those floors, but not, like I said, not create ceilings for them because we want teachers to go above and beyond. But we want to
Yeah.
give you a basis of here's where, this district or here's where we stand when it comes from an equitable instructional learning practice for students.
Yeah.
And here's the
Yes.
baseline that we're going to standard. Here's a standard we're going to set across the district.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, I always talk about, and I always do this, right? Because like we layer like layers on a cake, you know, for
Hmm.
teachers. And then the cake's going to fall over because you can only have so many layers, right? Because it's not supported. But when we like support teachers and integrate and show how to effectively collaborate or use things or how it informs things and honestly make their life easier because we have thrown 8,563 million things at the educators that we're trying to get them to do during the day, right?
Right.
And so how are we setting them up for success? How do we give them time and space to get to know the individual needs of their students, to get to know their students as people
100%.
and respect and honor that? How do we honor them as professionals to make the best decision around what their students need versus on this Monday on week 3, you have to talk about this, despite if your whole class is like, wait, I'm confused. Can you please repeat that? No, like, I don't even know when that happened, but it happens. And it breaks my heart, to be honest, for the
Yeah.
teachers and the students, right? Everybody's frustrated.
It's too many layers. It's kind of like paint. I had a problem for my mom. She has lived in an older house and we had to renovate, do some things. And
Yeah.
we got to a point where we were painting the wall, but the paint wasn't sticking. We're like, what is going on with this paint? So we got a professional in there and they said, oh, it's like 12 layers of paint here. Like, it's not going to stick anymore. You
You need a
gotta,
new
you
wall.
gotta scrape it down to the bare bones, and it's just like that. Like when you continuously put layers on top of layers on top of layers, eventually the paint's not going to stick anymore, and
Yes.
it's
Oh,
going to
that's
be
nice.
like, what's going to happen here?
And then you bring in the professional
And the-
to help you
and
bring it to
start
the bone
scraping.
so you can paint it how you need to
You
paint
bring
it.
in prodigious, and we just start scraping. No
Yes.
point. I had to plug that in.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That was so great. That was so great. Look, you'd think we'd planned that way. We didn't. I promise you. You
Yeah,
probably
just prodigiouslearning.org. That's it.
just go check it out. Go check it out.
Go
So in
check it
addition to that, okay, so I love a passion project.
out.
Passion projects have a tendency to turn into, what we need to be doing because I always think they align. And maybe I'm just
Yeah.
speaking to myself right now. They do align, I feel like, with our calling and our mission. So that's very exciting for you all. But you also are getting to also launch a podcast. Yay for fun podcast.
Another podcast.
Yay. You know what? I went to Podfest last year because I'm like,
Oh,
hey, yes. I was
I
like,
heard about that.
I'm learning about hosting my own podcast. Let me go. And I learned so many things about podcasting. That was really helpful. So I'm super excited you're going to launch yours because you have a wonderful
Yes.
niche that you're going to fill. So let's talk about what you're about to launch.
So this podcast has been in the making for almost a year and a half. Me and my wife, it's called Life, Life, and it stands for Love, Inspiration, Faith, and Education. And so, funny thing is, it's gonna probably officially launch this weekend. We've been procrastinating. Life has been lifing over here.
Life been lifing. Like, look, it's really lifing.
It's really like, but we've just had so much going on with kids. I have a senior this year. She's about to leave the nest, our first one.
Ooh, that's an
I have a,
exciting,
you
scary,
know,
fun time. I know. Mine's
and
about to
it's,
be a senior and graduate. I feel like I just did that.
Jesus, it goes by fast.
Fast. You know what's funny though? I asked him, I said, "Oh, this went so much faster than high school, don't you think?" He goes like, "No,
Mm.
no, not to me." I was like, "Okay, well, that's fair. You probably got to work harder for this." But anyway,
So
so life and got a senior.
life. So we're going to do deep dive conversations about life. So I want you to think about it. Like a lot of people, when they see Tami, Dr. Tami Dean, but do they really know Tami? And how did Tami get there?
Hmm.
Um, and the goal is for us to start not breaking it down, but to get people to understand that, life has a lot of trials and tribulations. And just because you see me sitting here on the screen, you don't know what I've been through.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know I came from a rural area where statistically, I'm not supposed to be sitting here today.
Right.
My mother and father were divorced before I was one. So that was another statistic against me. I'm from South Carolina. Boom. I'm a black male. Boom, boom. Uh, so, statistically, I'm not supposed to be sitting here, not supposed to have what I have. And, we want to be able to tell the stories of who is Dewayne McClary and how did he get here. It's funny that I had someone approach me a while back and said, you know what? You said something in your presentation that just changed my life. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what the hell did I say? I hope it was good.
Right. You're like,
Um,
ooh, hope it changed it in a good way.
but being transparent and sharing your story about how you got here, what you do, and I dealt with this, I dealt with that, uh, helps somebody. So being transparent about who you are and what you do. Like a lot of people don't know. They look at me today. No one would ever know that Dwayne McClary takes therapy. Yeah, I'm a black man and I take therapy and proud of it.
Hey, shout out to therapy.
Uh,
I've definitely talked about my therapy. I've been in therapy more than once. I'm in therapy now. I love therapy. My therapist is on a break, and I'm like, I emailed her. I'm like, "When you coming
when
back?
you come back,
When you coming back?" Uh,
like it therapy has helped me. I will tell you, to be transparent here. That's probably the first time I spoke about it. I said, yeah, I'm going to share this on the Tammy Dean show on Dragonfly. But my mom was diagnosed with dementia back in 2020.
mm,
And my brother and I can speak for myself. I think I can speak for my brother too. We were in denial about it. Like, oh, she's gonna be fine. Oh, da, 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 da. Mother's Day of last year, went to visit my mom. And when I tell you we saw it, and my mother has been living with me ever since then.
oh my gosh, yeah.
And so dementia is a disease, a cruel disease,
Mm,
because it changes the person.
mm-hmm,
So it's like I'm going to lose my mom twice. I'm losing her now in front of me,
mm-hmm.
but then I'm going to eventually lose her forever from
Yeah.
this earth. And so a cousin of mine, he's a minister in Tennessee. Roger, he said when he found out about it, he's like, "You need to get therapy." He was like, "Look, I'm telling you, you might think you're strong, you could do it." He's like, like this is different to see your parents struggle like this. He was like, and your mom has been like the rock for a lot of people. Like, you need to get therapy."
Mm-hmm.
Tammy, I was like, therapy, I'm good. Like, you know, I'm gonna pray it away.
Look, as I wrote, I said, "Oh, I'm the oldest daughter, Gen Xer. Like, I got this. I didn't have it. Let me just tell you."
Didn't have it when I'll tell you what took me out when my mother saw me and we were out somewhere and she told someone, "Oh, this is my nephew." Nephew. Like I was like, wait, what? Like that. like that did something to me that was just like need help.
Yeah.
And so my wife was like, you know, you got insurance, health insurance, go get therapy. It's free. Like, just do it. Like, there are things I
Yeah.
can't do for you. You need a professional. So I talked to my therapist, and it's been the best thing I've ever done. It's revealed a lot of things that underlying things I never knew about.
Oh,
And now everybody in my household is getting therapy, from kids, my wife, everybody, because I saw the benefit of it, and I highly recommend it. It doesn't show a sign of weakness. It actually shows a sign of strength when
it
you
really
have to get help.
does. um, I had reached, and I think the important thing too is to recognize like finding the right therapist. Because at one point
Yes,
I
yes. I went
reached a
through three
plat.
until I found the right one.
Yes, you need to, or recognize like I had a wonderful therapist, but we reached a plateau in my therapy where she just honestly wasn't maybe equipped or just wasn't her expertise to dive into the next part that I
Level.
needed.
Yep.
I mean, Dragonfly Rising, I lost my sister and she's my only sibling. I'm the oldest. I took care of her all the time because, I'm a Gen Xer. We were home.
Hmm.
Um, and that just changes your whole family dynamic. Like that's a whole, like I can't even explain that. And everyone forgets about the sibling. They're like, oh, the
Yes.
parents, her children, but like she's been in my life her whole life. You know what I mean? Like she's the only person, right? Like, and no one else understands your family dynamic like your sibling.
100%.
You
100%.
know, like
And there's secrets you've told each other and nobody
exactly. There are just things, and um
and those hidden conversation and jokes when so and so walks
all
in
the
the room,
hidden
you
or
look at
the
each other.
faces you can make, like when your
Or
parents are
me and my
doing
brother,
something.
we can text and say one word and we know exactly
Yes,
what each other are talking about.
exactly. Like, and I can't even describe that profound loss. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
feels somewhat similar to like I have a good friend whose mother is also going through dementia, like
Hmm.
seeing that and watching that happen, right? And it's coming and it's just so painful. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found a different therapist and she is amazing and she had the right tools. But I would tell my friends, I was like, ooh, this is so great, but it's also like so heavy because like she got to the root of these things and you're like, wait,
Yep.
what?
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 That's not what I thought. I thought I
I
came. I
didn't,
came in for another reason.
I was
That's not what I
like,
came in
I
for.
didn't know this about myself. What? You know? And I don't know.
And see,
Yes,
and for me, like my wife is my confidant. She's my best friend. But she told me like, Dwayne, there's things that I can't say. Like there's what she said there's things that I can say, but you probably won't take it in that way.
right.
Where if this professional tells you, you'll be like, you know what? So it has been like there's things my therapist has been like, she's really been peeling away the layers
Oh,
to get to the root cause. And I'm sitting here thinking like, wait, and I'm paying you to do this to me.
I know. And you're like,
But it has been so beneficial. She's given me so many coping skills and mechanisms to uh, you know, deal with one, dealing with my mom, dealing with the loss of my father a couple of years ago. We didn't have the best relationship.
mhm.
So, dealing with that, dealing with some other things in life, being a father, being a man, being a black man in America, work, like it's just things that um, I never thought about that has been really helpful. And like I said, I always was told I come from a very religious family. My grandfather was a minister. My godfather was a minister. I have slews of ministers in my family right now.
Yeah.
It's like you go to the Lord, take it to the Lord in prayer, and you'll be all right. Pray about it. Yeah, you can pray about it, but God also gave us common sense to
Yes.
people that have skills and abilities to help us. And
Yes. It
so,
is not an either or in my world. Like
correct, it's
it's
a both. You
both.
need both.
And yes, absolutely. Oh, I agree with that so much. It's just so helpful. And we think about equity, right? Like everyone should have
Everyone should
access,
have one.
the opportunity to seek out a mental health provider for support if they need it. Like,
You know what? Everyone should have health care. Everyone should have internet access. Everyone should have quality education. And everyone, I think, I should run for president. Everyone should have a thing.
look, okay,
I'm
I'm
not
just
running for president, folks. Like, let me stop that. I'm just kidding.
um I saw something today and I don't know why it just made me think of that and you anyway, it said no one should have imposter syndrome at this point. We have the biggest imposter in the White House right now.
See, Tammy, I wasn't going there.
Look, I can always cut it out later, but I had to say it right now. Look, I'm a little feisty at times, a little feisty, but I was a very quiet and shy child. See, that's something no one would ever guess about me.
And see, that's why I'm gonna have you on live podcasts. People can really
Yes.
hear who is Tammy? What who are you? And that's a
Oh,
question that a lot of people don't ask themselves. Like, who are you? And then you have to sit there and think. If you're like me, I hate talking about myself. Like I'm the
mm.
behind the scenes person. A lot of people don't know that. I'm an introvert. A lot of people think I'm an extrovert. I'm an introvert.
Oh,
Eh,
see, yeah, I would have thought you were an extrovert. Just like
No, I
interesting.
hate it. Like when I get up on stage and have to speak in front of people, I think my first time I had to speak in front of a big audience, it was like 5,000 people. Man, I almost messed up my pants.
You're
My
like,
wife
what I
had
get
to
myself
talk,
into?
my wife had to talk me through it. Like a lot of people don't know it. They think it's easy. It's not as easy as it looks. Like I might make it look easy. It's not easy. I'm an introvert, but I can turn it on, turn it off. But yeah, it's it's the things like that people don't know about
No,
who
yeah,
I
no,
am.
I wouldn't have thought that about you. So look at I learned a little something today too. So I love that. I'm excited about
But I'm
life
good at
because
connecting with folks. I can connect with you easily. More face to face. Oh, we can go all day.
oh,
But
you know what? My friends are like, oh, never met a stranger. Like I remember one time we were
yeah,
somewhere and they were like we went to a restaurant and they were doing something that the group was like, does she know them? My friend's like, no, she doesn't know
yeah.
them. You know, that
But if you give me my remote and my downstairs in the basement in my man cave, I love myself. I can be myself all day, straight through, and wouldn't have a problem with nobody else came down and talked to me. As long as I got something to eat and the rest,
you're like,
I'm
I got
good.
something to eat, I got something to watch. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I'm good.
I feel like as I get older, I'm probably more extroverted, but I also, as I've gotten older, like enjoy just quiet, you know, like I'm just
Yes.
in my space. And I'm a empty nester right now. You know, my son's away at school. My daughter moved out. She lives with her boyfriend, right? So I'm like, what is this life?
Yep.
It's just so interesting. But I'm excited about the podcast because one, I believe in the power of story and narrative. I think that's how we've always connected with each other as humans, right? And as people, like the power of story, the power of being transparent and vulnerable. You know, I've
Hmm.
said that so many times on here to people that are like, yeah, I know, I know. No, but it's true. Like, show up as yourself, be transparent. It gives people space to feel free to also be themselves and you get to honor these people as individuals. So I love that.
Yeah, you don't get caught up in the ego. So, sometimes you get caught up in the ego that it gets to a point where people feel like they can't come to you. And
Yeah.
I've always tried to be transparent with myself, even when I led teams. Like, look, I'm just like you. Our goal is to work together.
Mm.
This is who I am. This is how I show up. And I always go through this with my teams. These are my triggers. Like these are the things. These are my pet peeves. Um, and tell me yours because I want to make sure that when we're working together, the ultimate goal is to get to this, this end goal. I want to make sure that we're providing the right environment for you to make sure that you're successful.
Yeah.
Because my job as your leader is to move barriers out your way, not to micromanage you.
Oh,
Like if
amen
I
to
have to
that.
micromanage you, that means I don't need you.
That yes. Yes.
Like, but my job is to let you give you the runway to
Hmm.
run and be innovative and do the work and find innovative ways and approaches to do it. Be there to kind of keep you on the path, but I'm not going to hold your hand.
Yeah,
And so
and
I
open
think
doors if you need it, like advocate for you.
that's
Like,
where where
Yes.
we got to get people to. Like that's how we're going to be a thriving economy, a thriving ecosystem to work together. Because we're at a point now where we're so polarized that it's just you can't even have clear conversations with people. I remember when I was in school. I don't know if you remember this, and anyone else on the podcast remember this. Who remembers the pillars of citizenship?
Oh my gosh.
We were taught these, like these things were in our faces everywhere. Trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Like those were the pillars. So yeah, that's how we had to learn these things.
You're like, they were
And
ingrained.
and they were engraved in us, and we had to learn about these things. We also learned about primary source information. Like
Mm-hmm.
my librarian, Miss Fitz, Esther Fitz, she just passed away, over 100 years old, but she taught us like what are primary sources. Like just because you see it on the internet, just because somebody say it, doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
How do you look and investigate for yourself? It's just like church.
Like
You know, my,
media
my past
literacy, right? Yes.
my
Oh
pastor
yeah, just
always tell
because I
me,
said it,
just
like,
because I
well, what's the
said it, don't
context
mean
of the
go
verse?
read
Like
it for yourself.
you just pulling it out. Like, what is the
Exactly.
context? Like,
Exactly.
yes, yes.
So
Don't believe everything you hear. No. Oh, media literacy is like a huge thing too. Like, how do I do that? What does that look like in this day and age? How
and
do we?
that's part of the digital
Yes.
equity prongs. The citizenship, like digital literacy and etiquettes. But
Mhm.
also, I think the other component is like the tech support and accessibility for people with disabilities, because I think we always forget we leave those pockets of people out who have disabilities, like they
Yeah.
also are people too. So,
Yes.
UDL design, like how do we make sure that we're designing for everyone? And I think that's where the equity comes in.
Yeah.
It's not a thing where we're trying to put people in subgroups and separate and try to push this one up higher. No, equitable approach is trying to lift everybody up at the same time. But we
Yes.
also have to understand that everyone didn't start at the same
Yeah.
pace or at the same place.
Yes.
So, how do we support individuals? We might have to raise some levels higher for individuals because they may not have the same experience, lived experience that others have. And I'm
Yeah.
and speaking on that, and I'm going to say this, and I'm gonna shut up. I get this a lot. Um, just because I'm a black male doesn't mean that my lived experience is like every other black male.
Oh,
Just
yes.
because you're
Mhm.
a woman of color doesn't mean your experience is like every other one. I'm not a Barack Obama. I didn't grow up like him, but we have commonalities.
Yes.
I'm not a Clarence Thomas,
Oh.
but we,
If you only could see
but
the face.
but it's we are all black men, but we have different lived experiences,
Yes.
and so you can't categorize races and groups of people when you don't know where they came from
Yeah, those
and what
individuals. Gloria
experience
Letts,
they had.
yes, Gloria Letson Billings talks about that. She talks about it about, cultural competence, right?
Correct.
It's recognizing that I may look like a student in my classroom or a colleague of mine, but our lived experience is not the same. That does not mean,
Correct. Correct.
right? We are the same. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. And then to me, going back to the whole conversation, I think the polarization is happening because people feel like they need to convince other people about their position. Engaging in a conversation moves to understanding. It doesn't always lead to agreement, but it is looking at the individual perspective and providing enough respect to who that individual is to at least listen, right? To what they have to say. And we're just not even trying to
We're not trying to listen. If you
listen.
don't agree with me, then you're my enemy. That's not going to work. I would think you may have heard this before. Like we're all on the same ship. If you start burning the ship, we're all going down.
Well,
So,
look,
you
somebody lit
know,
the part of the ship on fire recently.
so it's like, what are we going to do? I see you trying to trigger me,
I'm not, I promise.
trying to get me because I want to say.
Nope. Nope. Okay. Yes, we're all on the same ship. We want to be on a
So
successful ship. We don't want to
we
be on the Titanic.
there's one America, and there's no two Americas. Like there's one. And
Yes.
so if we destroy it all, then yes, those people that might agree with you, yeah, they still might agree with you, but they're still going to suffer too.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do things not understanding, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go with this person, but not understanding the impacts and implications that's happening based on, you know, what is being said and not really going back to those primary sources, not
Yes.
really looking at what does this really mean.
Yeah.
See, I'm a case by case, I'm an issues voter. I vote based on the issues. I don't
Hmm.
vote based on a party. Now I
Yeah.
will say I've never voted for one party ever in my life because based on the issues,
Issues.
I've aligned with, this individual. I will say there was one Republican that if I lived in Maryland, I probably would have voted for Larry Hogan because of some of the things that he was saying.
Hmm.
Um, but not the Larry Hogan of now. No, I wouldn't vote for him. But I'm an issues person, and I think we
Yeah.
got to get back to that. Like, we really need to understand what the issues are, and we have to also understand that Washington D.C. Uh, works for us. All of our congressmen they work for us, not vice
Absolutely.
versa. Like are we are the end all be all, and if folks aren't working on our behalf, and not just on my behalf, but on behalf of all American people, then what are we doing? Like what is this experiment that we
Yeah.
call democracy? So we
Yeah.
got to get back to understanding the primary sources and understanding, what's true and what's false, and not allow people to tell us what's true and what's
Yes.
false and take them at their word.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it is essential to realize like I know people think their vote doesn't count, but it does. And you need to get out and use your voice to and if somebody is on their own agenda, but they're representing your state, your country, like that is not what they're there for. That is a public service. It is called a public service position for a reason because you are in the service of the American people. And that is all the American people, right? And that is why historically, yes, people have had disagreeing ideas, but they've been able to,
Agree to disagree, have
yes,
non-closure.
have conversation, right?
Exactly.
Like, not this like junior high tit for tat that has been happening recently. Like, so I hope we can get back to some semblance of democracy um in the near future, at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
for my sanity. If
I think it's
nothing
going to take
else.
all of us. It's going to take
Yes.
K-12. It's going to take higher ed. It's going to take nonprofits, for profits. Like
It's the
one thing
power
COVID,
of your voice.
correct. One thing COVID taught us is that we could not get through that pandemic alone. We needed every industry there was,
Yeah.
from profit, for profit, nonprofit, K-12, private sector, parochial. Everybody was in the same predicament, and we noticed we needed each other. And that's people talk about the silver lining of COVID. That is what COVID taught me. It also taught me to give people grace.
Hmm.
And so I've continued that and given people grace and the opportunity, to deal with just life, because things happen to us, every day, and we just have to learn how to navigate through it. Um, but still have to show up as an employee, as a
Yes.
father, as a husband, or as a wife. You still have to show up. So um, that's just me, and I enjoyed this. This has been awesome. But
Yes.
I'll close with saying this, and everybody who knows me knows that this is my saying. This has been my mantra since I started teaching: is do right by students, and we have to do right by students in everything that we do. And that doesn't just mean the teacher. That doesn't just mean the principal. That doesn't mean the superintendent. We're talking to everybody. That
Mhm.
means the business owner. That means that the companies that's trying to sell things. Like, your job is to do right by the students that you serve, and we got to make sure that we're pushing students closer. to opportunity, not further than away from opportunity. Every decision that we make, regardless of where you are, think of it as like an ecosystem, a pond, and you're at the epicenter of the pond. And every time you make a decision, every time you put something out there, you cause a ripple effect. And my question to you is, when that ripple effect happens, are you pushing students closer to opportunity? Are you pushing them farther away? And we have to look at our our actions. We have to look at what we're doing and how we're supporting K-12 differently, or we'll continually be in the place that we are with opportunity gaps and kids not wanting to continue instruction or seeing it as an opportunity to even grow or survive, disconnected and disjointed from life.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing this just out of routine. Like, it takes all of us to get to that place to where we see our students, uh, and we start actually thinking about it and doing right by them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was amazing. What a great way to end it. Thank you, Dewayne, for joining me today in the conversation. I feel like we could probably talk forever. Listeners, I will put some links in the show notes for you. And don't forget your homework. Go figure out where the ban on cell phones in schools started. So until
Where
next
did it
time,
started?
yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
This wraps up another episode of the Equity Hour podcast with me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean. Make sure to check out the show notes for any resources, links, and next steps from today's episode. Head on over to Instagram and give us a follow at Dragonfly Rising LLC for more tips, resources, and opportunities to connect. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, intent is not enough. Action is necessary. How will you use your voice today?